Yes.
All right. So, hi everyone once again. My name is Archimedes and I'll be the chair for this particular round. Congratulations for making it this far and kudos to yourself. Um, can the panelists kindly introduce themselves as well so we can begin the debate?
Hi everyone, I'm Franz Servilla. I'm one of the panelists of this round. Again, congratulations for reaching this far. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yes. My name is Yao Ming. I'm the other panelist for this round. Best of luck.
Thank you. So, thank you, panelists, and thank you all. So we're just going to start a debate. A couple of ground rules. All WSDC rules apply. 8 minutes for main speeches, 4 minutes for reply speeches. POIs within the first and a 6 minute. Kindly do not badger. 15 seconds apart. And speakers kindly state your preferred mode of taking the POIs, whether through chat or through voice. I'm going to time you, but kindly do time yourself as well. We'll have a lovely debate. With this, I call on the Prime Minister to begin on the debate. Here.
Okay. POIs verbally. I might not see them in the chat. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Spirituality and religion ceases to be what it stands for when it lowers itself to be a passing merchant in the stream of people's lives, providing base goods. 3-part setup. First, how these promised rewards look like. It looks like providing a reward in the afterlife compared to on their side providing promising material in life. Looks like religion saying that they will be more lucky and successful in their life. You cannot promise specific things. And we think that their side is only capable of taking credit for when you make it into Harvard. They cannot fiat that they're able to suddenly, whatever they say, come true, and any goods that they promise will come true. So sure, we are promising material in the afterlife on our side, but the material on your side is also uncontrolled. So you can't talk about the specifics. Second of all, on how faithful practice looks like, we think it looks like praying. We think it looks like adopting the ethical values of the religion that prescribes, so not committing any sins, being ethical, helping one another's. And we also acknowledge that their side may have more buy-in in the short term for people joining because people may care more about immediate rewards. But in the long term, we think people will be more satisfied and appreciate the religion more. So as long as we prove that being rewarded in the afterlife is more valuable in the long term than gaining material in this life for people who follow religions, we think that we win this debate. 2 arguments in this speech. First, on spiritual consistency, and second, on ethical behavior. So on spiritual consistency, we think that the main thing of religion is that religion is a form of escapism that helps you to be content with what you already have in your life, right? It's a way to bring relief and allow you to just live your life to the fullest, even if you're down, to still be ethical. That's why people join and stay in religion. So we think that you will never be able to keep the materialist in the religion. And even if you could, that's not what you're trying to offer with religion. You're trying to offer contentment. You're not trying to offer a materialistic view where you just try to give as many things to people as possible. You're not trying to say, don't worry, your life will be better in 10 years. We say you may suffer this life, but you'll be in heaven forever. That's a much stronger and much more durable relief. So we think that the idea of an afterlife actually aligns more with the concept of a religion, more on belief, more on spirituality, because we cannot promise immediate benefits, but this long-term spiritual view can actually provide more relief to individuals because you're saying in the long term, when you're describing this image of a soul's eternal journey, these are stories people can immerse themselves in, right? Material goods in this life, we think, remove the feeling of spirituality because if you look at many religions, they're based on the idea of contentment with what you have, right? That's not in any way compatible with material wealth. This is a contradiction. And we think it may allow us to get some new followers, but altogether you lose out much more devoted followers that have received relief from this idea of the long term, from your idea of contentment and just being content with what you have instead of focusing on the future, instead of focusing on what could happen, focusing on maximizing the coulds and woulds. I'll take a POI.
If you're rewarding people with materialism when they're being very spiritual and using this religion to the best of their abilities, is that not encouraging like the spirituality you're talking about?
Yeah, it encourages spirituality, but in a very sideline way. It's like saying, okay, we'll give you a cookie, so be spiritual. That is not a way to keep followers faithful because as we already described, those followers, you cannot guarantee that those rewards will happen. We think this is a very unsustainable method of providing relief. It's one thing, you say one thing, and that's not as big, actually, I think, of a relief, because say you give them like a Mercedes-Benz or you give them $100,000. That's great. But what about if you waste it, right? Then it's all lost. On their side, yeah, on your side, it's all lost. On our side, we will always have the eternal afterlife. No matter what happens in your life, no matter how you screw up, no matter what happens, we will have this afterlife. We say, based on your behavior, you will always have this backup no matter what happens. On your side, we think that is much less, you get much less relief when you only get those goods, or you get this idea that you'll have those goods. But even when you get those goods, the moment you mess up, you feel as if now that's it. There's no more support mechanism. There's no more backup. So second point on ethical behavior, we think that there's a problem with promising more material in this life. It's that there's this trade-off, right? Because you're going into the material world, what you're doing is you're telling believers and people you're trying to convert that what the church can give you is material in this life by being ethical. But there are so many other ways, i.e. through hard work, that you could gain material wealth. So you're competing against what you have, right? You're competing against what already exists in the status quo, i.e. the methods that already exist by, okay, you become a lawyer to gain material goods and all of that. Sure, those methods might take effort, but there is an alternative that you're comparing yourself to, compared to when you're only on a spiritual basis, where you get much more, you get no competition and you get much more buy-in, because you're able to paint this picture that nobody else is able to. You're able to say and be the only arbiter, and you're able to say, we can provide relief in a way nobody else can. And that is how you keep people faithful. That is how you keep people behaving ethical. And that is how you keep providing relief to the people who truly need it, right? We think that on their side, they create this trade-off where people no longer see what the church is promising as valuable. After all, you could get it yourself anyways without religion, right? If you look at the world, there are so many people now that are atheists, and those people, there are obviously a lot of rich people that are atheists. We think that this is a clear contradiction. It shows that it's possible to get rich without being religious. It's a big competitor. So there will be a rich atheist saying, no, don't follow religion. They don't provide the material wealth. Actually, they're just giving you a bogus promise. I can actually teach you how to get wealth. They can have the courses. You're competing against those courses instead of fighting or creating your own path that we can, as religious people, follow your own path of relief that is separate from that. We say, no, you don't need that type of material, or you can, still just be content in your life. We think that's a better way in order to keep people relief, because when you're in the moment, when you're in that moment and seeing whatever, this is sustainable. You don't need goods. You don't need anything. You just, in the moment, you realize that, okay, I will have this afterlife. The moment is enjoyable. I can just be content. I can just, for this life, listen to the doctrines, listen to and just pray, right? We think that also people's faith might lower if they don't see the promised material, because thinking that prayer will give you rewards, right? This not only means that you will focus on prayer instead of actual hard work and effort to get the material goods, but that lack of hard work on top of the fact that religions cannot, at the end of the day, change their life trajectory. What this means is that people feel as if their prayer and effort wasn't answered. And when you promise material now, they're looking for an immediate gain. If that gain isn't visible, they lose faith. They stop practicing the doctrine of the faith. We think that opposition cannot come up here and say we won't promise them immediate rewards, because or you will only promise them rewards in 20, 30 years, because that weakens the whole point of your case, right? Because if your case is to say, oh, immediate rewards, that's what gets people to truly believe, because you're promising them something up front instead of something far away. Well, you have to take this trade-off. You have to take this trade-off that we have to promise immediate rewards. And when those immediate rewards inevitably don't come up because you're not able to guarantee those rewards, we think that that is a very negative thing. Like, sure, your prayers and your ethics might lead to them gaining things, but ethics is not a guaranteed path to success. And when these people do not gain the rewards that you've promised them in 10, 20 years, it's an unsustainable way. They lose their relief. They go into a spiral of pain and suffering. You create a link between this ethical behavior and wanting to see immediate rewards. We think this leads to people becoming less content, proud to propose.
Thank you, speaker, for those wonderful remarks. Kindly be reminded to ask viewers only within the first and the 7th minute. With this, I invite the leader of opposition to advance the case of the opposition. Here.
I can't see us.
Yep,
Sorry.
you're visible and audible.
I didn't realize our thing was a bit iffy. Yeah. Do you have your phone? Thanks. Okay. My name is Vanessa. My pronouns are she, her, and I'd like verbal POIs, please. Okay. Starting. Oh, sorry. Starting. So sorry. Okay. Starting in 3, 2, 1. It's hard to be satisfied when you never get anything and recognize that that is just props world. We don't have the fear to make sure that you get into Harvard, but again, they don't have the fear to ensure that you get into heaven or heaven exists. While on our side, we are still able to take credit for its successes in order to keep you believing. What they have to do is keep you in constant fear. That is not a world we should ever stand for. Okay, before I may move on to just like the whole idea behind corruption, all the issues that arise from that, which only happens on their side, might I add, I'm just going to quickly touch on a couple more things. So, why is promising material rewards much more sustainable for the religion? It's okay, recognize that it's really hard to have the intrinsic motivation for like an 80-year-old's like lifetime of like about 80 years to have that personal determination and have that faith to believe in God and do good and follow religious practices for the idea of maybe getting into heaven. Recognize again that heaven is like an idea. You have no proof that it exists. It's just something that you like are entirely reliant on blind hope for. That is very hard to ensure. The only way that a prop can ensure that is through fear. It's through like promoting the idea of hell. The idea that if you don't do all this stuff, if you aren't like following everything that the church demands of you, then you're going to burn in hell for eternity. That's not a life we want to promote because it takes away from religion as a whole. And there are other harms. I'll touch more on that later. On our side, comparatively, it's much easier to like find material rewards in your life and attribute them to like the good and like your following of faithful practices. We see this in like prayers where people just like say, oh, we thank God for this bread. It's very, very easy to attribute things to like religion. Okay, and now on all the topic about how like, oh, apparently we lose faith because atheists can still get rich. Okay, couple like responses for this. Firstly, religious people are very devoted, right? There's a couple reasons for this. It's like hugely reiterating their life. It's probably like ties to their culture as well. And there's a strong community within religions where you're constantly like exposed to it, and it's like exposed to you from a young age. Secondly, you also have things like confirmation bias, like I explained earlier, how you're likely to see like any like sort of material reward in your life as being and like attribute it to God. Oh, this is because I was religiously helpful, because this makes you feel better about yourself. This makes you feel like you're actually believing for a reason. Thus, these religious people are very likely to find excuses as to why all these atheists are getting rich. So they're still likely to believe. On the comparative, in props world, they never get any reward because they're just hoping for like the idea of heaven. So they're much more likely to lose their faith. Also recognize on our side, it's much easier for people to quantify like how much they need to do. So that way you don't have to be living in constant stress about, oh, I'm never actually doing enough. That's something I'll touch more on later, but that's a huge win for our side. Okay, I'll take the POI now quickly.
If religious people are really so devoted, why wouldn't they be satisfied enough with this afterlife?
They are devoted, but recognize that you have to like ensure devotion in some way. You can't just hope that it's going to happen by promoting fear, and that's probably like your only way of doing so. That's not something we stand for. And I recognize that again, you have to like ensure devotion through actually giving them something. We give them stuff. You don't give them anything other than blind hope, which is not enough for like a long lifetime. Especially in our modern world, you're exposed to ideas of atheism. We're exposed to ideas of like, hey, maybe God isn't real. Okay, now onto corruption. So there's a couple of reasons that like corruption is like much more likely to exist on their side. Firstly, because it's very hard to hold religious figures and like the whole like, I don't know, maybe church or like religious state accountable on their side. Why is this? An issue of the afterlife, like I said, is that it's hugely reliant on hope, a huge level of blind faith with no proof or experiences to help you believe. There's nothing you can ever attribute to being from God because you're not going to heaven until you die. So what this means is leaders have much more room to do things like lie and to like manipulate religious texts. They can promise anything without having to ever deliver, because what they're going to deliver is like, oh, we'll deliver heaven when you're dead. But on our side, they are able to be held accountable because they have to deliver some level of tangible material rewards, and relatively soon as well. Secondly, corruption is much more likely to happen on their side because, again, it's very hard to question religious leaders as a whole. Recognize that religious leaders are usually like characterized and described and sort of like thought about as being maybe like either sent from God or chosen by God. To question them is to question God itself. That is first like hugely sacrilegious, and secondly, just like not done. This is like against like religious law and stuff like that. So what happens as a result is you cannot question these religious figures. Recognize again that this does not happen on our side because you can question them, because you actually have proven reason to do so. On prop side, you can never question them because all your like reasoning is, oh, I don't feel like I'm actually going to heaven, and that just sounds, they'll just tell you, Don't be silly. You're not believing hard enough. On our side, you have the proof. Hey, look, my life still sucks. There are no material rewards. You can hold them to account if there are no material rewards on our side. So what this means is, to an extent on our side, religions are incentivized to ensure material rewards come to their followers. This means that they have to actually, to a little, like, take action to ensure that they get these material rewards. This looks like things like maybe supporting charities, but even just as simple as like blessing people. Recognize that even this is like leads to many, very, very many like actual genuine and important outcomes. Blessings bring lots of comfort to people's lives and helps them in times of stress and helps empower. This like emotional comfort is actually huge, and we still think that's a big thing. That's also just a unique benefit on our side. Okay, so then on corruption, what does this look like? Firstly, this looks like taking advantage of and exploiting the most vulnerable people who are putting their entire trust and probably money and like energy into you. This is like wrong for this is just simply morally wrong. But secondly, it's also like likely to hugely negatively impact their life because they are under the pressure to give more and more, even when they may not be able to like comfortably do so and still like maintain their standard of living because they are constantly still in that fear. Oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough. Hell is coming. Okay. Secondly, corruption also looks like living in living in active fear because you think that you're not doing enough, and this is something recognized. This is something that prop is incentivized to hugely promote because without fear, they have no reasoning, they have no standing, they have nothing. If there is no fear of hell, there's much less of an incentive for you to work so hard and go to heaven. Flip side, what does our look like? We don't have fear because there is no threat of eternal punishment. At our very worst, if you don't like practice faith as if you aren't like the most faithful practicer out there, you don't go to hell for eternity. Instead, you just have like less cool stuff in your life. That is something that people are like more okay with, and it's something that puts less stress and fear in them in their lives. We see this as a good thing. Now, thirdly, another thing that on corruption, what this means is religious leaders can demand anything because the promise of eternal heaven just sounds so good that they are able to continuously demand at an increasing rate with a huge pressure on their like followers to do so without ever having to justify themselves. Because recognize that in our world, the level of like religious like practice and faith you're demanding has to be at like some level equivalent or like proportional to the amount of like material reward they're getting. On prop side, you can just like demand anything because oh my god, it's heaven. That's not, and then that gives you again just even more like possibilities and chance to be as like, corrupt as possible. Okay, and so what are the harms like corruption as a whole? Firstly, you're taking away from the faith. That's something that we see as like hugely harmful because then it's no longer about believing about a kind community where people care about each other. Instead, it's about being in fear and being like as strict to following the little like religious law as possible in order that you can like escape burning hell. Secondly, you get a worse reputation, right? Because once people realize that oh, it's like full of fear and it's highly likely to be corrupt because corruption was much more likely to happen on their side. When it happens, what you then get is like a worse reputation. You don't see like the Christian, like the Catholic Church, you don't see the Pope as like a good guy. You see him as like a guy who's constantly taking bribes of politicians. That's how you get things like decreased buy-in. You see him as a guy who's just like exploiting the poor, like Christians who just want like more faith and like comfort in their life but aren't getting it because they're just being put in fear all the time. What this leads to is things like decreased buy-in. People are less likely to believe and follow this religion. They're more likely to like leave, and you get less like practicing religious practices. This is again bad because religion is a good thing. Like I said, it usually comes from like the idea of helping each other. Okay, and also just on the harms of fear, I don't think like I need to just really emphasize how damaging this is. Fear, firstly, it's like just decreased happiness but it's also an all-consuming stress that consumes every part of your life. Oh my god, am I donating enough? Oh my god, did I help every person I could? Secondly, people are less connected to religion because it's now associated with fear. Religions are typically very intertwined with culture. It's very like a family-based thing. And when you're no longer able to find joy and happiness and solace in your religion, you lose its meaning. It's hugely harmful because now you're just stressed by it all that time. Recognize that at our worst in our world, even if you can't fully fulfill your faithful practices, again, you just get less stuff. But what happens in their world is people are living an all-consuming constant fear of hell that is much, much worse. And that is not something we stand with op. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, for those wonderful remarks. Would invite the Deputy Leader, Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you're audible and visible.
All right. Pronouns she, her, and POIs verbally only. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. To the extent that we get more religious buy-in, we give people resilience, and we shift religious followers' belief, I think that we always win out in this debate. To start the speech, I will be rebutting the points of the opposition. First of all, opposition says that they get sustainability through material goods. Heaven is just an idea. You have no proof that heaven exists. Religions have existed for thousands of years, and in all that time, people have believed in the existence of the afterlife. They say you don't give them anything, but we do. Religious people have never believed because there's 100% rational proof, but they believe because they want to believe that heaven is real, and because believing them gives them good. It gives them value, and the good of contentedness and relief. That is something that they gain on our side. Opposition says that we allow lying on our side. Their side allows lying too. Look at the religious evangelists in the US that promise this idea that if you give a certain seeding through money, you will sow rewards in the future. People will be even more cheated into doing this through this immediate gain, especially since you assert that they crave these immediate rewards more. These pastors can just say that you weren't faithful enough. Fourth, opposition says that the promise of heaven sounds too good. This is another contradiction. You say that people won't be satisfied enough with heaven, but at the same time, you say that it sounds so good that it will allow corruption. What? Fifth point, they say that religion is a good thing and we don't want people to leave. Even if we accept that people will leave on our side, on your side, religion can't keep its doctrines of spirituality at the point at which you focus on teaching people materialism is a solution to all their woes. Sixth, I don't think that opposition can assert that we lose out on religious followers on our side of the house because the afterlife is too far. To the extent that people believe that there is something better at the end of the line and that their religions are telling them that they should keep being better people, we still maintain religious buy-in. And I think the opposition completely mischaracterizes religion as a whole. Religion should not be about getting things in life. It should be about living a fulfilling life. Religions are supposed to give people faith, not promises of materialistic gain. And this is a big strategic mistake that opposition makes on their side of the house. They say we take advantage of religious followers. Op talks about how because we never actually promise anything to anyone in their lives, we push them to believe that there's an afterlife. We're taking advantage of them. But this is simply not true. We are telling them that they should be better people in their life. Whether or not there is an afterlife, that is not a burden that we have to hold. We are ensuring that people who follow religions are better people within their lives. Say opposition's worst case, they see that people will always demand more on our side. I think this harm is actually for their side. It's actually far worse on their side because people can actually see the things that happen in their life, and when things go right, they will demand more. When they get into Harvard, they will demand more, and that is where demand gets worse, not on our side of the house. On our side, we are only promising something in the afterlife that may or may not happen, and people won't rely on religions to give them things. This is a key point here. Religion should not be about materialistic gains. They should be about living a fulfilling life. They should be living a good life, being a good person. And I think that these are three main things that opposition completely loses out on. Now, on to arguments. First of all, we think that the most important thing here is we need to shift the emphasis on materialistic pursuits from religions. The whole point of religion and status quo is to drive people away from consumerism and the pursuit of wealth. Religion is against that. On OP, they give you a world where they promise people materialistic pursuits in their life. Two things Prop has to defend with this. First of all, they set an expectations for people that something will happen in their life. This goes wrong because oftentimes life does not go often to plan, and people's expectations are far too high and unrealistic. Second, they make people focus on the promises religions have given them, which creates three main problems, as my first speaker said. First of all, it fosters discontentment with what you have because people know they can have better, because they've been promised something better. And when they don't achieve this something better, and I say when, because these goals are often unrealistic, and people believe God will make it happen as opposed to their own work, which simply does not work. It creates tension between individual and religion when these materialistic gains don't pan out. Even if we also have people trying to gain something on our side, for example, the afterlife, at least the gain is better because it is not a promise and it is not something that people will see is happening in their life. People will see if they don't get into Harvard. People will see if they don't become rich. However, people don't know whether or not they will live in the afterlife. It is the belief that it'll happen. That is what makes them better people in life. That is what pushes them to live fulfilling lives. And that is what makes them better people. Now, third, it diminishes individual merit. If these materialistic pursuits pan out, it is the religion that will take credit, when it is often because of the hard work of an individual. People lose merit and devalue their own work when it is actually their own work that has gotten them to where they are in status quo. It is not because God made it happen. They got into Harvard because of their own merit, because of their own work. And I think that religions on their side of the house only diminishes that. So then why is it so important to shift the focus away from materialistic pursuits? When you do this, you let people focus on the afterlife and say that people will be rewarded in the afterlife. People will do two main things, okay? Because they believe that acting moral and acting good will eventually reward them, they will do so. For many religious followers, it is the pursuit of a good afterlife, one in heaven or whatever, or one where you are reincarnated at a higher level, that keeps them motivated to engage with morally upright and virtuous behavior. They will believe that their fulfillment comes from more than materialistic possessions and instead comes from contentment and mental well-being. They will actively pursue better mental health. This happens because people want to be the best versions of themselves in order to live a good afterlife, as this is the norm that religions have pushed about what people must do to get into some form of heaven. I think that on our side of the house, we win out because of this. Because we shift the narrative and actively promote people living better lives as opposed to materialistic lives, people will actually try to get the things they want as opposed to believing God will make it happen, which unfortunately does not work in status quo. And I think that people will be the best versions of themselves in belief that it'll work out for them in the afterlife. And even if it doesn't work out for them in the afterlife, our absolute worst case scenario, and religious promises don't pan out on our side, at least they were able to be fulfilled when they were alive, and they were the best versions of themselves, and they worked hard for what they wanted, and they die with merit and the inherent belief that they achieved things in their life on their own, and not because of religious promises that materialistic things would happen, and their religious and their own, the things that they achieved, the goals that they achieved, they were not taken away from their religions. And I think that we win out solely on the fact that belief trumps expectation at every single scenario for the average person trying to live a good life in status quo, especially for them. Now, second, solace in times of distress. At least religious followers know that something good will come at the end of all their hardships, so long as they act morally. Insofar as religion is based on visible reward, when these people meet distress, they know that there is some sort of hope on the other side. There's some sort of reward they will get at the end of the day, so long as they act morally. They know that, and this is especially important because when bad things happen, instead of losing faith in religion, which is what often happens, which happens on op, because people make materialistic promises, and I've already explained why these promises don't often pan out. So instead of losing faith, people actually believe that their hardships will eventually create a better life for them, and that their actions will decide their afterlife. They maintain faith in their religion and continue to act morally. And I think that this type of resilience and this type of faith is so important and so exclusive to our side because of three main reasons. First, people easily lose faith on opposition side of the house. Second, the world has many challenges. People often have to endure hardships which are impossible to escape. And on our side, we push them to be resilient through it. We tell them that things will get better if they act good. And op, on the other hand, loses out on religious followers because people had high expectations. And I don't think that op can say that people are rational enough to know that the materialistic promises that religions give them are unrealistic, because it is in the nature of religious followers to believe everything that their religion says, and that is only enforced further when religions take credit for the good things that happen in their followers' lives. And I think that third, we create the mindset that people should be rational, emotionally stable, and resilient in order to continue living well and achieve a good afterlife. So we win out here on three main reasons. First, we get more religious buy-in. Second, we actively make religious followers better people in their lives. And third, we give people hope and resilience through challenges and hardship because people believe that there is a better future ahead. Proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. For those wonderful remarks, I'll invite you to please leave your position. Here.
Am I audible?
Yep, you're audible and visible. Ready when you are.
No, it's not. Sorry. It's the best I can do. Okay. My name is Emily, pronouns she, her, and POIs verbally, please. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. I think both sides of the house provide a good incentive for people to continue these religious and faithful practices. Both sides give a very strong incentive, and like we told you reasons at first why like our promises would be fulfilled and why this will keep people like following this faithful practice. What we do in this debate and how we win is that we prove that we have that there are large harms when we tell people that there is an existence of an afterlife, and that like huge harm like is extremely outweighed by whatever pretty symmetric benefits that they've tried to claim to you down the line. Okay, I'm gonna be giving you some rebuttal today and then an extension on how harmful it is to tell people that there is an afterlife and how this impacts their life. Okay, onto my rebuttal. So they told us that our promises wouldn't get fulfilled, and this would mean that people would like lose faith in the religion. We told you why this isn't true, because yes, these religious entities aren't able to like go and make people's wishes come true, because that's not viable. But these people are so entwined with the religion, they're so invested that they're going to find that confirmation. They're going to use that confirmation bias to find a way to justify the means and like the commitment they've put. This looks like the rain coming and you having a good harvest. This could be a coincidence, but people who are highly religious are going to see this as a promise being fulfilled, as a material reward from the religious entities that they believe in and that they love. And this can manifest in so many other ways other than harvest. It's going to be very likely that people are going to see this and use this as confirmation bias. That means that our promises do get fulfilled in one way or another, and we don't get that loss of religion, and which they tried to claim we have on their side. And they also have very active harms of corruption, which was largely unresponded to by the second speaker, because we told you how much power these entities have over these people, and especially when you're giving them promises of an afterlife, which is so unspecific and very, very vague. They're largely purported, right? And that gives them lots of room to like mold the story to a way that will benefit them, because rather than having material benefits that are easy to see and that are easy to weigh up with the amount of commitment, the amount of investment, the amount of donations that you're giving, and the amount of time that you're committing to your religion, suddenly they can just claim that heaven now has like a fountain of gold and like it's so much better, and that like this huge amount of benefit that you're going to get after you die should mean that you can sacrifice practically anything in your life. And that gives these religious leaders so much power to make people commit more than they should, commit more than they need to for a religion. And it takes away from this religion, because religious leaders dictate the story and people are fearful. They live in fear. We told you and gave you mechanisms at first about why this is true, because when they live in fear of going to hell and things like that, they're much more likely and more vulnerable to be taken advantage of, because the church is very likely to give them large expectations. So corruption is so much worse on their side, and they try to tell us that we're taking away from these doctrines. But when you are inciting this amount of fear into a religion, correlating fear with your practice, your faith, I think that takes away from your religion and affects you as a follower much, much more, and very negatively. Okay, and they also told us that that we're not going to sustain people, but there's an example I'd like to put to you about like Greek gods, right? Greek gods were like responsible for a good harvest and things like that, and people would give them offerings, lots and lots of offerings, to hope for a good harvest. And maybe one year there was a really bad harvest, but they would still continue to give these offerings another year, and maybe there is a good harvest another year, and that means that their like faith is reignited again. This faith is always continuing. People want to find a way to justify their means. Okay, they also told us that there's this huge thing on materialistic views. We don't think this is true, because it's not just about they don't really explain why they get more spirituality on their side. And these materialistic rewards are necessary because they provide an incentive, because we told you people can't be completely self-determined to just like go and practice spirituality, and they need some sort of incentive. They also told you solace, and we get that. We don't get that, but I think we have solace on both sides because we give them a reward. Heaven and material rewards are both an incentive, so it's pretty symmetric on both sides. So why do we have a worse life for these religious followers when these religious entities are promising them an afterlife? And that means that they're going to have a very bad life. Why is this? Because when you tell people that another life exists, that means they believe that, right? And when they believe that, that means that this life isn't the only life that they have. This life can be used to do good. And that means that the afterlife is for their enjoyment. And that means people aren't going to make the most of their life as if it is the only one that they have access to. Because when this doctrine of the afterlife exists, they think they have a second chance. But this promise is just a promise. There's no way to know for sure that this can be fulfilled. And that is so damaging for people, because now they are focused and fearful of losing out on this afterlife, their only chance of having an enjoyable life, because they committed their life to doing good so that they get into heaven. But what they've actually done is had the opportunity cost of enjoying the one life that they probably have on the promise or idea that heaven exists. Okay, I'll take that POI now.
Please explain how hell is part of this motion. This motion isn't about the afterlife. If you look at the wording, it says promise of rewards in the afterlife and the followers themselves.
Even if it isn't about hell, I think it's really scary for people to have committed their life in the chase of going to heaven. And if you lose out on that, that's still going to create a lot of fear in you, because they're dedicating their life to doing good so that they get in heaven, which means that they're scared to do anything that would mean putting that in danger, right? So the fear is still going to exist to a very large degree, even if heaven doesn't exist. And especially with religious leaders, as we told you, being very corrupt, they have that incentive to make sure that fear is instilled, because that means that they have more power over these people. They're more vulnerable. They're easier to manipulate to get them to do the things that they want. This looks like donating to the church, so they have more money, so they can live more obscene and luxurious lives, because we told you why they're very likely to be corrupt, because of how much power they have. Okay, so pretty much what we told you is that this corruption really takes away from religion, and it ruins the lives of individuals. And this idea of the afterlife is extremely harmful. I think both sides have pretty symmetric benefits with getting people incentivized to follow religious practices. So at the end of the day, we win on the harms of prop side. Stand with opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, for this wonderful remarks. I will invite the government's whip. Here.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, perfect. POIs verbally, be her pronouns. I'll begin in 3, 2, 1. The point of this debate is not whether you get the materialistic gains. It's not whether you get into heaven. The point is what you push to religious people, because nobody can prove that either will happen. When they start their first speech saying that you never actually get into heaven, they lose this debate. So proud to propose. First of all, a strategic observation, right? They already lose this debate when they tell you that on our side, we push people into hell and frame religious people as bad people at the same time, right? I'll rebut them in fourfold, since they never properly respond to our POI. The contradiction here is that if religious people were so bad, if religious leaders were so bad, if the church was so bad, no one would trust them to give these materialistic gains or heaven, right? Or everyone on both sides will be hurt by religious people being so bad. But secondly, not all religions are restricting and extremely strict, right? We don't say that some are not. They are. But if you don't want an extremely strict religion that will send you to hell if you just do one small sin, if you just take a sip of alcohol, then you can easily convert into another religion that is more aligned with your belief. Belief is the entire point of religion, right? You go to a religion that is the one you believe in, right? Not the one that tells you can get more materialistic gain, instead of the one that tells you will go to hell. Instead, like the one that will tell you if you don't do this thing, you don't get into Harvard. You believe in a religion that you actually believe in, the one that you want to get into the afterlife of, right? People are stressed on both sides. They're fighting a one-sided battle with no contention and no harm proven to our side. Thirdly, this debate is about reward in the afterlife, not harm in the afterlife. Insofar as I now tell you that the point here is that there's no list to go into hell. As long as you're not really immoral, if you're not a bad person, you will go into heaven. We promote heaven and we don't threaten people with hell. Your case is hinged on heaven and hell being based on fear. And so long as we take this down, we win this debate, right? But finally, if the fear is on our side, it's on your side as well, right? Everyone will still know about heaven and hell, even if you don't push it. There is still fear on your side. And one more thing I'd like to point out as well, right? In their second speaker, they have this weird thing where in like under 10 seconds, they somehow manage to say that, oh, you cannot prove that we're materialistic, and then say that materialistic things is the only way you get people, right? This is just really confusing, and I'll prove to you how we are more spiritual in my classes. But before I move on to that, I'll take a POI. No POIs, okay. Engagement noted. Moving on to my first class on belief versus expectations, right? On both sides, there's an assumption that people believe in religion to gain something out of it, right? To benefit. This doesn't apply to every religious person, but the key stakeholder of this debate is those who do. Why are both of these stakeholders better off on our side? Firstly, let's look at what opposition tells you, right? They tell you that if you promise heaven, which might not happen, like you can't hold the church accountable, but you can hold the church accountable for like not giving you materialistic gains. But there's no way the church can get you into Harvard, right? There's no way the church can give everyone the materialistic gain, right? When you promote materialism, people will want more and more. There's a hedonistic treadmill. If you just feed these gains to people, they will always demand more from these churches. They will always want more if you give it to them. And I'll take you in a sec. Sure, we cannot prove that you will get into heaven, but this is what the debate is about, right? It's about whether we have people believing in the religion. It's whether you still are promoting religion, or some churches giving religious people free stuff, right? I think it's like instead of spending 50K on trying to get someone into Harvard, it's much better to spend money on their church charity, etc. On your side, people will want personal gain. You cannot take charity on your side. And before I move on to what we tell you, yes, sir, I'll take that POI.
How can people find solace and comfort in their lives if they're constantly under the fear that they're not doing enough?
I just told you that it's not about the fear of getting into hell. If this exists, it exists on both sides because people will always know about hell. But on our side, we are pushing that you will, if you do good things, you will get into heaven. So long as you don't do extremely bad things, you will get into heaven, right? We are not saying that, oh, if you do this and this, you will get into hell. That is a bad religion. We are not promoting those sorts of religions, right? If those religions were so bad, I don't think they would be telling you this anyway, right? Okay. On our side, we tell you that the entire point of religion should be taken away from materialistic gains as much as possible, since people will try to gain something out of it anyway. We can do it better. On their side, they push the idea of materialistic gain further. When they find $100 on the street, they think, oh, it's because I prayed today. When they get into Harvard, they think, oh, it's because I've been Christian my entire life. They think this instead of focusing like on the spirituality of religion, instead of thinking, oh, I'm religious because I believe in God and I want to be in heaven. It's solely because you get something out of it. The reason is so bad because you take credit for something that likely was caused by the person's merit or any other reasons, but also they're always expecting something more in this life. Bring me on to the second layer, when they never actually get this materialistic gain that they can hold accountable for on their side because it is materialistic and happens in this life, they will get angry. They will think, oh, after being Christian for 30 years, I'm still poor, I'm still hungry. That's when it's the worst because religion promises them these materialistic gains, and it's not like the church will give them like a huge sum of money, right? But there's like somehow what they push on their side. They think they don't need to work for it, and which is why they don't get into Harvard, and they get mad at religion later, right? I'll tell you why this is bad later. But the other stakeholder is that the one that tried so hard to get into Harvard and also prayed and still doesn't get in, then who do they blame them? They blame the church that told them, if you pray, then you get in. They lose all faith in their religion. We already told you why religion is a good thing, even though this is not the point of contention in the debate, since their side tries to get more religious people. I already took one, so no thank you. I'll move on to the principle later. But on our side, we don't have people losing faith in religion because of something that was never meant to be linked to religion, right? Capitalism, that was supposed to stay far away. There's still always this possibility for you, like, to spend your entire life praying and you can still get into heaven, right? You believe that you can, and that's why you're religious, because you believe in God. The church stays consistent in what they preach. We maintain the belief and the focus on God rather than on materialistic gains. But furthermore, we also tell you in times of solace, when you're hurting, in bad times, instead of blaming religion, you have something to look towards, right? You always have a belief that, oh, even if I have no materialistic gains in this life, I might still be able to get into heaven. And they cannot prove that that's inherently false because, like, we don't know if heaven is real or not, right? These people are more resilient and will stay in your religion in the long term. We take this class, we prove by belief is better than expectations. We get better belief on our side. Moving on to the second class on practical and the principle and the practical religion. They try to bring to us this idea of corruption, right? I think we already rebutted this earlier within my strategic observation, but I'll expand right now. This is not mutually exclusive to our side. They can be corrupt on your side as well. They can say, oh, we will not give you these materialistic gains if you don't do this, or that, right? You never prove why this only exists on our side. Sure, hell can be used as a threat, but it can be used on your side, and materialistic gain can be as well. You get this like harm in twofold because there are two ways they can use this, right? So I don't know why you're framing religious leaders as bad people. If this is true, we should not be debating this motion at all. The first word that comes out of their second speaker is that both sides of the house provide a good incentive. Sure, but how we win is that we prove large harm to you when we tell you that there's a large harm, when you tell people that there's the existence of the afterlife, the harm they push at us exists on both sides, yet all the benefits we have, and I'll tell you those in a second, it is exclusive to our side. They're trying to say, right? They're trying to say that, oh, you lose faith when the promises fail because people are so intertwined with religion. This isn't true because your entire religion is based on the idea of like gain, right? People will not just live bad lives on our side because they think that they have a second life. It doesn't mean people are not going to enjoy their current life. Please explain how is being a good person not enjoyable? How is are you saying that pursuing material gain, that's the only enjoyable thing in life? Moving on to what we told you, right? We tell you that literally in our setup, that on our side, we will take the trade-off that maybe we get like a few less religious people, but literally these people are the ones who probably don't even believe in religion. They just believe in the 1% chance that religion might be real and pray for materialistic gains. They probably pray for every god they can. They probably will cheat on your church. We don't see how on this side, we don't see on our side how this is good at all, right? We don't think that armchair supporters or believers benefit the religion at all. We proved why they already believe so easily in our previous class. On our side, we get the devoted supporters, and on your side, you don't have these because the religion will be fragmented. Those who are devoted will leave because you turn it into an idea of materialistic gain. Their entire case contradicts the entire idea of religion. They lose the most devoted supporters. They lose the key idea of religion. They cannot win this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, for this one of remarks. I'll invite the deputy, the opposition whip. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Phoebe Lee. I will be taking POIs verbally and
Pronouns as she her.
pronouns as she, her. Okay, I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. Proposition in this entire debate has framed their life on this motion where their life is framed as a time of suffering in exchange for heaven. They're saying that, oh, you should be enduring this entire lifetime of suffering, of following these religious leaders, telling them what to do in exchange for this promised afterlife of heaven and healthy first. Firstly, I'd like to clarify some things about what they think we've been talking about. Firstly, my second speaker has already told you that we are not talking about hell. The fear in itself of not going to heaven, in which people are expected to go to, are expected to maintain this perfect life throughout the entire lifestyle, is that it's still bad that for them to not go to heaven. This basically torment because it's a life of limbo. They're not getting this promised happiness, and that in itself is already bad. That in itself fuels this fear point that we've been talking about through this entire debate. I'll be going on to some rebuttal before I weigh out some two main points of clash that are found throughout this entire debate. So, firstly, proposition has told us that the followers will be living a good life because they will be helping other people because of this kind of desire to go into heaven. And firstly, this goes into my fear point. People are still going to be scared that they're not going to go to heaven, and they're going to be questioning every single move. Are they being good enough? Are they following in enough public health? And that means that they're going to think about every single move that they're doing. Are they helping this random person on the street? Are they going to go? And notice firstly that unsolicited help is worse than not helping somebody else, because they people often feel like this is unsolicited help. It can often lead to more harms than benefits. And secondly, these people are going to be
following what religious leaders tell them to do, because there's this kind of faraway future that you cannot prove at all of heaven. And so religious leaders are able to use this kind of text to be able to define it whatever they want, and kind of tell them, oh, you need to follow this set of rules that hasn't been defined in any religious texts in order to go to heaven. And that means they can tell them, oh, you need to donate all of this money to the church, and you need to kind of spend all your time there, or like pray some more. And that means that in order to gain this unattainable, this thing that they will never be able to attain until they die. And that means nobody can prove that this actually does happen. So that means they can prove no tangible benefits, because they still haven't, throughout this entire debate, rebutted our entire point on corruption and why religious leaders will be exploiting these people. They haven't really told us that these religious leaders aren't going to exploit these people, and those people are going to be helping more people. And that goes into my two main points of clash, which is the constant fear versus the confirmation bias, and secondly, why the visible versus the long-term promise reward on either side of the case. So on to my first point of clash is why proposition's case is worse because of this constant fear. So 3 things about their model is, firstly, the unproven and vague promises of heaven or threats of eternal not even eternal damnation, just eternal nothingness. They don't even get happiness. And that it is bad, because that hinges on blind faith. The entire case hinges on this this blind faith where you just have to believe and practice the religion in order to maybe be able to go into heaven. And nobody can promise that to them. So because this motion is contingent on faithful belief, religions literally have no other means on keeping these followers. And that means they're going to be hinging on this fear of not getting into heaven. Yes?
Say that people who are good will get into heaven. How is being a good person unenjoyable and a bad life of depression?
Because they're going to be so worried that they haven't been good throughout their entire life, because they haven't been getting any of these materialistic goods and materialistic rewards, which is what I will be going on into later. But to summarize it shortly is that when you have materialistic rewards, people are going to be reinforced for good behavior immediately after. And even if we don't kind of get that, in our worst case scenario, these stories still happen. People talk about it, and they're still going to believe that, oh, they do get materialistic belief, because coincidentally, people are still going to get this reward, and people are going to talk about it, and other people are going to believe these stories. And I'll go into that more later. But onto the 3 outcomes of why this constant fear is bad. Firstly, you get an extended fear and stress on these people where they're scared to question the faith, which is completely normal in itself, but also they are scared throughout their entire life that they haven't been led a perfect life. They haven't been faithful towards their religion for their entire life, and they're going to be questioning every single step. They're going to be looking into their history and kind of seeing, oh, what have I done wrong? What have I done? What should I be doing better? And they're going to constantly be scared. And yes, while you do get some social outcomes of this, they're still going to be stressful, and there's still going to lead a life of fear, which is overall worse, because you can't promise that they do get this kind of a good outcome in heaven. And so they're just going to be worse off overall. And secondly, into our corruption point, where they're still going to have this outcome where religious leaders are more tended towards corruption, and they're still going to be making these people follow kind of like bad outcomes, or maybe donate to the church like unreasonable amount of times, and they're going to be not be able to live that kind of good life, because that's kind of satisfaction or fulfillment that proposition in this case has been trying to tell us is not actually happening, because these people aren't getting any kind of reinforcement, aren't getting any compensation for things that they've been doing for the religion. And that goes into the visible versus the long promised reward. Proposition only promises heaven in the far, far future. And so proposition doesn't actually get any real benefits in this case, because long that in itself, firstly, is not enough of an incentive, because it's unproven and it hinges on these blind faith in a world that is selfish and prioritizes self-happiness. Notice that followers only follow these religions because they want this happiness in their far terms, and they're devoted to it because they want to kind of get this kind of materialistic rewards. But proposition wants these people to suffer. In their first speech already told us it is better to suffer for the entire life for this vague promise of heaven instead of getting these material rewards. And we still get benefits. Even in our worst case scenario, we still get benefits because we aren't condemning them to a life, an afterlife of nothingness or even damnation. And we, at the very least, people do something.
and they get reward for it, or they do something and they don't, and they still do more
You're
because
right.
they're not doing enough. And so material rewards only means tangible rewards, and so it's not materialistic. People don't demand more and more, as proposition has been trying to tell us, because they're going to think, they're going to self-reflect and see, what have I not been doing enough? So they're going to kind of get feedback on themselves, and they're going to go into and then improve themselves, and that means that's better social outcomes for our society. And that also means that they do more for society in order to get that kind of materialistic rewards. And as I already told you, in our worst case scenario, that people don't they don't get that immediate confirmation bias where, oh, coincidentally they do get rewarded for the good behavior immediately after. We still can claim that benefit, because stories happen. People are going to talk about, oh, I did this good thing for a homeless person on the street, and I immediately won the lottery. They're going to talk about it on social media. They're going to spread it around in order to maybe spread their religion around. And so people are going to be talking about that, and people are going to believe that more, because you want to believe people who are in your community, you want to believe your family. And so proposition in this entire debate cannot claim this, because the dead person cannot talk, and that is why I'm so proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that particular remarks. We'll now invite the up reply to some of the debate. Yeah. Speaker, you are muted.
So sorry, I forgot. It's okay, I haven't started yet. Oh yeah, Vanessa, she, her pronouns. Okay. Thanks for telling me. Starting in 3, 2, 1. The point of a religion is to bring people happiness and solace in their short lifetime. It is to help them through times of stress, and that is something we achieve uniquely on our side. 2 points of clash today. Firstly, on quality of life. So firstly, on religious bias, secondly, on quality of life. But before that, 2 just quick clarifications to make. Firstly, material does not mean materialistic. I don't know why, prop is tying this so much to capitalism. Material rewards can just look like things like the food on your table. It does not have to be a G-Wagon. Secondly, people don't demand more and more. We give you many reasons from this, starting at firstly, because of things like confirmation bias, how people will attribute any good that they any material rewards that they get to their religion, to their god. And secondly, because people attribute a lack of immediate reward to the idea that, oh, they haven't done enough yet. They will find reasons as to why they haven't gotten this thing yet. Recognize that there's no specific menu. There's no idea that, oh, externation just gets you that Harvard acceptance. I don't see, there's no mechanization from proposition as to why people are apparently thinking of God as a wish granting genie. This does not stand. People won't have this snowballing demand for more and more. Instead, they're going to be content with what they have and attribute any lack of further things to just simply them not doing enough. Okay, firstly, on religious buy-in, why does this happen more on our side? Firstly, recognize that people get rewarded tangibly. They get positive gratification in the short term. This incentivizes them to continue believing, to continue doing good. On prop, they don't get any sort of reward. They just have this sort of hope that they have to live with. We give you many mechanizations as to why this long term is unlikely to be enough. Secondly, what we also get is a more positive environment in the church, because recognize that our religion is not based on fear. Our religion is not based on, oh, if you don't do this, you don't get to heaven, because recognize that fear of not getting into heaven is very similar to fear of getting into hell. If you're not getting into heaven, this eternal reward, you've got, I don't know, eternal nothing, as I said, that's basically equivalent to hell in these people's minds, or even in my mind. Okay, so we went on religious buy-in. Secondly, on quality of life, recognize firstly that this is the most important thing in this debate. At the very least, regardless of whether or not God is real, the point of religion is that people can be happier. We want them to enjoy their lives. We want them to be happier with themselves, and this is only something we get on one side. 3 main regions of us, firstly on fear, secondly on solace, and thirdly on demand. Okay, firstly on fear. Okay, so again, firstly on our side, people don't have to fear hell, which again is akin to not getting to heaven. And secondly, you don't have that fear that you're not being virtuous enough, because at our very worst, say that you're not the best religious practicer out there. I tell you this at first, the worst outcome you can ever get is just not as much cool stuff. You will never have that long-term, oh no, eternal happiness and perfection forever. That's something that prop is constantly threatening on their side. also recognize on prop side, you have life, the life that we're living right now, which may be our only life as well, as being framed as a time where you suffer with this idea of like future happiness and like euphoria. If this doesn't, so what happens is people are more likely and willing to go through suffering in their life. The idea that, oh, you might get it at some point, but this means that they're less likely to place value on enjoying their life and finding happiness in the moment, because they can just bang on the fact that, oh, I will have happiness in the long term. They're less likely to care about things like their quality of life. They're more likely to make like undoing sacrifices for their church with the hopes of like doing more, maybe getting in. This is not something we stand for, because again, they have a worse quality of life, the most important thing in this debate. Now, so we went on this. Secondly, on solace. Something to look, the promise of something to look forward to is symmetric, but we uniquely deliver because we get material awards and people attribute, when on our side people get material awards and attribute to the direction, we give you mechanizations for this, such as confirmation bias and the tangible proof to ensure gratification and like happiness. Okay, now so we went on this as well. On demands. On this side, we tell you the stuff fast, all the stuff about corruption. I don't really think they like hard me. Religious leaders can demand for so much more. They dictate the story. They can use this for their personal benefit because of the fear. People will always oblige and people will sacrifice lives because they think, oh, maybe I'll be happy in the long term. This is unlikely to be true, and thus they live an unfulfilling and unhappy life. This is not something that we'll ever want to stand for. A life where people are pressured to do more and live in fear for hope, when instead they could be happy, enjoying their lives, and actually finding solace in the life that they have right now. That is what we stand for. Stand with all.
Thank you, speaker, for those wonderful remarks. I'll invite the proper reply speaker. Okay.
Am I audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Pronoun she, her. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, it is clear why opposition has lost the debate. First of all, they mischaracterize religion. Religion is about faith and fulfillment, and Op characterizes it to be about materialistic gain. By doing this, they have given themselves the harm of losing religious followers when promises don't pan out, which I've already proven to you. Only in their reply speech, they change their characterization and say that religion is about being happy. They also give us new content in this speech, saying that we think God is a wish-granting genie. If anything, this is their harm. They are the ones who are making promises and creating expectations, and we are just pushing people to believe that things can be better. Op only had to do one thing during this debate, just one. They had to prove why expectation is more important than belief. They didn't prove this because they only asserted that they give people a reward and didn't acknowledge the fact that these materialistic promises are often unrealistic and burden pushed, saying that people have higher expectations on our side. Their lack of engagement with our first, second, and third speaker, saying that materialistic promises create less buy-in and is more unrealistic than burden pushing. This proves that they are refusing to engage in a trade-off and have convenient contexts. We didn't hear any more benefits to their side on top of that. They spent the rest of the debate asserting why our side was bad when many of their harms were symmetrical, if not worse off on their side. And they repeated the same thing over and over again. They never told us why their side is better. We told you that we have a better world, but we didn't hear that from their side. What was particularly bad on their side was that they constantly undermined their own case, like how they say materialistic rewards don't have to be that great. For example, food on the table instead of a G-Wagon, or when they constantly say how lying is unacceptable, but that's really what you're doing when you're telling people they will get things that you cannot guarantee. They never again proved to us why beliefs are not better than expectations. If I can prove to you why this is untrue to you right now, if I can prove that right now, we show that we have won this debate. We told you 3 things in this debate. First, that religion promises relief and solace, that things will be better. Second, we told you that religious followers are more ethical and moral on our side. And third, we told you that it is necessary to shift the emphasis on materialistic pursuits. Life is however you interpret it to be. If somebody is in a tough situation and in a spiral of depression, we should provide them the solace and relief. You've never able to solve all the materialistic needs of people through false hope. We reject this. The main benefit for this is that we emphasize on personal merit. We have more buy-in because people don't have unrealistic expectations that won't pan out, and our followers live more fulfilling lives where they are the best versions of themselves. Having a belief that will turn out better is always better than the expectation of materialism on their side. Materialism goes against religion and faith. We get more buy-in because people maintain their religious faith despite the challenges in their life. People are happier because they are fulfilling their goals and being as happy as possible. And given the reply speaker's characterization of religion being having the purpose of making people happy, we win out on that. And on fear, why would people on our side live with fear? If anything, they will live with hope that things will be good and and try to be the best people that they can. On their side, their benefits are unrealistic and unproven. Given their own characterization of the world being selfish, they then have to defend people having demands for materialistic gains. They have to defend corruption because religions are promising more than they can realistically do. All the burden pushing they do are their own burdens. At the end of the day, panel, this debate is very, very clear. Do you want to support a side where unrealistic expectations make religions lose out on followers, a side which ignores the burdens and harms we have pushed on them repeatedly and gives us symmetrical harms and repetitive arguments? Or do you want to support a world where we push followers to believe that things will be better, where we prove to you why belief is more important than expectation? Again, we told you at the very beginning of the debate that the only thing opposition had to do was prove why expectation was more important than belief. All we did was tell us why our side doesn't work by giving us harms that are symmetrical and worse on their side. In fact, they never told us why their side works better. Our side teaches contentment with what people have. Their side teaches false hope. The majority of their harms are symmetrical, and on the nature of religion itself, they might as well have argued for atheism. Proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you all for a very lovely and engaging debate. All the best in the semi-final. Whoever deserves to go through will choose. So thank you once again. Panelists, I think we can join breakout room 10 to deliberate. See you. Bye.
That was cold. Yep, thanks for the debate.
Thank you.